Welcome back to the radio. Tonight's story takes you into the quiet, steady world of 1998, where you are a fax machine technician. The year sits on the edge of change, with the hum of fluorescent office lights still strong, and the chatter of dial-up just starting to edge into daily life. There's a calm rhythm to this work, paper sliding, rollers turning, machines humming, like oddly confident coffee pots. The atmosphere is steady, almost timeless, even as new technology is slipping in around the edges. Of course, the funniest part is that you're fixing a fax machine while everyone in the office is already sending email attachments that arrive before you can even find the paper jam. That's efficiency for you. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And from what corner of the world are you listening? Drop a comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Quilloren Radio. Without further ado, let's begin. You step into the office with a kind of quiet that only exists in places where people have been working all day without moving much. The fluorescent lights hum faintly overhead, steady and unchanging, as if they've been trained to outlast every shift. The carpet beneath your shoes has that softened texture that comes from years of rolling chairs and wandering feet. It doesn't squeak or echo. It just gives slightly, muffling your steps as you head toward the sound of a machine that has already made its case for attention. The air is faintly warm, not in the way of summer air, but in the way recycled office ventilation tends to be. There is no breeze, just a faint current of conditioned air drifting out of ceiling vents, carrying the vague scent of copier toner and paper dust. You can almost taste the mix of heated plastic and faintly metallic dryness. It isn't unpleasant, but it isn't refreshing either. It feels like the kind of smell that could outlive the whole building. The fax machine sits at the far end of the room near the wall, half buried in a maze of cubicles. Its light blinks, steady and unimpressed, while a crooked piece of paper sticks out from its tray like a flag of surrender. The machine has the posture of an old friend who has seen everything and still insists on humming through it. The faint whir of its fan is continuous, like a small box that refuses to admit defeat. As you cross the room, you notice how everything is slightly uneven, just enough to catch your attention. A desk wobbles under the weight of a monitor the size of a small television. A ceiling tile sits a shade darker than the rest. Even the blinds over the window lean slightly, as if the cord has lost interest in keeping them aligned. The imperfections are quiet, though. They don't demand correction. They simply exist, small reminders that the space has been lived in for years, without anyone fully resetting it. Your bag feels heavier than it should, not because the tools weigh that much, but because every step here is slower than outside. The silence thickens around you, folding in on itself. No one is on the phones at this moment. The typing is paused. It feels like you've walked into the break between heartbeats. The only thing that doesn't hesitate is the faint vibration of that fax machine. A chair nearby creaks when you brush against it. The sound rings louder than expected, sharp against the otherwise padded quiet. The chair then continues to settle itself with a long, sighing sound, like it's been waiting all day for the chance to complain. You set your bag down on the carpet and unzip it, the teeth of the zipper clicking against each other in a rhythm more noticeable than usual. You take out a screwdriver, place it on the desk beside you, and hear the solid, blunt sound of metal against laminate. The desk surface is smooth, slightly sticky from years of cleaning spray and hot coffee mugs, but still holding its own. Beside it sits a plastic plant, glossy, and determined to convince anyone walking by that it's thriving. The fax machine blinks again. You press the power button, and the light disappears for a moment before returning in a slow, tired glow. The machine clears its throat with a mechanical whir, gears turning as if each one is reluctantly deciding to participate. A soft shuffle of paper follows, uneven and stuttering. The jammed sheet wrinkles against the rollers, holding its ground in protest. The machine isn't loud, but in the silence of the office, it sounds as though it's narrating its every struggle. A soft squeak. A clicking gear. A faint puff of warmed air. It's less like a piece of equipment, and more like a small, stubborn animal trying to pretend it's fine. You lean closer, and the heat of the motor brushes your hand, the kind of warmth that doesn't burn but leaves its trace after you pull away. The panel on the side resists your touch slightly before clicking open. A corner of paper reveals itself, folded tightly into the machine's teeth. You reach in carefully, tugging it free in small, controlled movements, the way you'd ease a sock out of a dog's mouth. The paper finally slips free, crinkled and uneven, its surface still carrying the faint warmth of the rollers. It curls slightly in your hand like it's trying to return to its previous entanglement. You set it on the desk beside the screwdriver. The page is covered in faint lines, half of a fax transmission that looks more like abstract art than text. The machine exhales again, as if relieved, and falls back into its steady hum. Its fan turns with quiet persistence. The blinking light holds steady now, no longer flashing in distress. It's a small victory, but the kind that defines this type of work. From the corner of the room, a wall clock ticks with a sound too soft to have been noticed before. It's an older clock, the kind with hands instead of digital numbers, its surface slightly yellowed under the glass. The second hand clicks forward at an uneven pace, as if some seconds weigh more heavily than others. You stand quietly for a moment, listening to it, the sound weaving itself into the ambient office air like background percussion. A small draft brushes your arm as the air conditioning adjusts itself, the faintest shift in the room's rhythm. The blinds by the window tremble slightly, their uneven tilt casting crooked bars of light across the carpet. Outside, the day continues without urgency, though the tinted glass keeps it muted, like a world turned down to low volume. The fax machine hums again, not in crisis this time, but as a low, contented murmur. It seems satisfied enough to rest until its next inevitable rebellion. You stay there for a moment, not rushing to pack your tools, not eager to break the quiet. The stillness isn't uncomfortable. It simply fills the space, pressing lightly against your shoulders, steady and certain. And in that moment, you realize the strangest thing in the room might be that someone still believes in this machine, stubbornly holding out against the tide of email. You can't decide if it's loyalty or denial, but either way, it has given you steady work. The scent lingers first. It's not strong, not harsh, just the faint warmth of toner and heated plastic hanging in the air. It clings to the back of your throat the way an old song gets stuck in your head, refusing to leave until it has had its full measure of attention. You hold the paper you pulled from the machine a few moments ago, its edges slightly rough where the rollers gripped too tightly, and the smell sharpens in your memory. It doesn't just remind you of this office. It carries you backward into another building entirely. It was years ago, early in your time on this job, when everything felt both exciting and strangely mundane at the same time. You were younger, though not much less tired. You walked into an office much like this one, carrying the same heavy bag, the same screwdriver, and the same steady sense that every fax machine you met had a personality you would have to learn. The memory rises with clarity, not softened by distance yet, as though it's been waiting for you just under the surface of that smell. That first office was smaller, narrower, with walls painted in a beige that leaned closer to yellow than seemed entirely intentional. The carpet had an almost sticky feel, not from dirt but from age, like it was holding on to the ghost of coffee spills long past. There had been a radio in the corner, a small plastic thing balanced on a filing cabinet, tuned to a station that played the same dozen songs over and over. Every time you bent over the fax machine, you could hear faint static in the background of the music, a soft hiss like the radio itself was losing patience. The receptionist at that office had been kind, the sort of person who spoke slowly and evenly, as though she was certain you would get the job done, but she wasn't rushing you to do it. She wore glasses with thick frames, and had a stack of sticky notes on her desk, so tall it looked like a miniature skyscraper. You remember her telling you that she always kept extra notes nearby because the fax machine had a flair for the dramatic, which she said in the same tone someone might use when talking about a family cat. The machine itself had been in worse shape than the one you just fixed. Its side panel hung loose, a screw rattling around inside like a trapped marble every time you nudged it. The rollers left streaks across every page, like a child dragging crayons across paper with more energy than aim. And yet, the office relied on it daily, as though email were a rumor and not a reality already unfolding in real time. You can still remember the way the machine sounded when you powered it on, a grinding whir followed by a cough of paper dust. The fan groaned like it was being asked to do something profoundly unfair, then settled into a rhythm that was only barely acceptable as functional. You had leaned over it, screwdriver in hand, and thought to yourself that this was the kind of machine that would outlive progress purely by being too stubborn to quit. The memory holds steady. The fluorescent lights in that office buzzed louder than the ones here, creating a constant background drone that made conversation sound softer, more private, even when spoken aloud. The smell of toner had been sharper, too, probably because the copier and fax shared the same corner of the room. Every time the copier clicked into action, it sent a faint puff of warm, chemical air drifting your way, reminding you how close you were to breathing in the 1990s one inhale at a time. You remember pausing during that repair, straightening up from the machine to stretch your back, and catching sight of the receptionist again. She had been typing at her computer, one of those thick, beige monitors that took up half the desk. The glow from the screen painted her face with a pale blue cast, and for a moment, you noticed how quiet the office had become around you both. No phones were ringing. No printers were clattering. Just the hum of lights, the buzz of the monitor, and the faint rhythm of her typing, steady and calm. It was ordinary, deeply ordinary, but in that ordinariness there had been a strange comfort. You were part of something steady, something uneventful, something that asked for nothing more than patience and a steady hand. The thought stayed with you long after you finished tightening the loose screw, replacing the ink, and watching the first clean page slide out with surprising dignity. A dry bit of humor had struck you even then, that you were spending all this time repairing a machine so someone could send blurry, low-resolution copies of text that could have been sent faster, clearer, and cheaper by email. You hadn't said it aloud, of course, but the thought had lived in the back of your mind, humming as reliably as the machine itself. The memory begins to soften now, dissolving back into the present. The smell of toner in this current office blends with that older scent, making it hard to separate the two. The hum of this machine fills the space where the radio once was. The blinds here cast a softer light across the carpet than the beige walls of that first office ever allowed. You blink, and the years fold back together as if they had never been apart. The receptionist with the skyscraper stack of sticky notes is long gone from your daily routine, but you can still feel her presence in the back of your mind when you work on these machines. Her patience, her quiet humor, the way she accepted the flaws of her fax machine as though it were just another coworker with quirks. It all lingers as part of the rhythm of your job. The fax machine hums again in the present moment, pulling you fully back into this office. The page you freed from its grip sits wrinkled on the desk, a small reminder of your victory. The air is steady once more, faintly warm, faintly dry, unchanged from when you entered. The moment of memory fades, leaving behind only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the machine, for now, is content. And so are you. The office doesn't stay silent forever. After a few minutes of the machine's steady hum, you hear footsteps approaching, soft against the carpet but purposeful enough to suggest someone has been waiting for this. A woman rounds the corner, the receptionist for this space, though she looks more like someone who was just in the middle of balancing a checkbook and got interrupted. She offers you a polite smile, the kind that carries both thanks and a subtle question about whether she'll have to keep rerouting people to the copier. "Did it give you trouble?" she asks, her voice even and calm, as though she's asking about the weather. You nod once, holding up the wrinkled page as proof. Paper jam. Nothing dramatic. It's free now. Her gaze lingers on the page, then flicks back to the machine. It does that at least once a week. I think it just likes attention. There's no sarcasm in her tone. If anything, she says it like she's talking about a pet that occasionally chews the furniture. You allow yourself a small smile. That's one way to guarantee job security. She laughs softly, a low sound that doesn't travel far but feels warmer than the hum of the lights. If that's true, you'll never be out of work here. She sets a stack of envelopes on the desk and taps the top one thoughtfully. We still send a dozen faxes a day. People say email is faster, but the partners like paper. They say it feels official. You glance at the fax machine, its blinking light steady, its hum low and satisfied. Official is one word for it. Inefficient is another. Her smile widens, not because the joke is loud, but because it's close enough to something she's probably thought 100 times. She doesn't argue. She doesn't need to. Both truths exist at once in the steady rhythm of this office. She picks up the wrinkled page you left on the desk and holds it delicately, like it might still be fragile. This one was supposed to be important. Something from a client. She squints at the faint, distorted text and shakes her head. Looks more like an inkblot test. You lean slightly closer, as though studying it might reveal a secret message. The blotches and half-printed letters blur together into a pattern that does resemble something. I'd say it's either a butterfly or a very stressed-out tax form. Her laugh this time is clearer, more relaxed. She sets the page down and shakes her head again, muttering, "I'll let them decide which." Another voice drifts from across the room, slow and mild, belonging to a man leaning back in a chair 2 cubicles away. He peeks around the divider with a kind of casual curiosity that suggests he's been listening the whole time. As long as it's not another fax from corporate, we'll be fine. Those are just memos about memos. The receptionist tilts her head in agreement. The last one was 6 pages long, about page formatting. He snorts, then shrugs. At least they sent it by fax. Keeps you employed. He nods toward you, and for a second the three of you share a kind of easy acknowledgement of the absurdity of it all. The receptionist returns to her desk, sliding the envelopes into neat piles. Her motions are quiet, efficient, and almost rhythmic, as though sorting paper is its own kind of background music. The man goes back to his computer, where the faint tapping of keys becomes another layer of sound in the office's steady hum. You remain by the machine for a while, testing its functions one last time. You send a single sheet through, listening to the rollers, pull it cleanly, and release it without complaint. The page lands in the tray with a soft whisper, crisp and unwrinkled. You lift it, hold it to the light, and see the faint heat still clinging to the surface. It feels less like paper and more like proof of the moment's success. From her desk, the receptionist looks over again. Seems happier now. You set the page down with a small nod. Machines are like people. Give them too much work, they fall apart. Give them none, they sulk. She rests her chin in her hand, considering this. So you're like a therapist for office equipment. The thought hadn't occurred to you before, but it makes a strange kind of sense. With fewer degrees and more toner dust. Her laugh is quiet again, but it lingers. The sound threads itself into the room's stillness, soft and genuine. It doesn't disrupt the calm, it deepens it. For a while, the office moves in its usual rhythm. A phone rings once, is answered, and settles. The man in the cubicle sighs now and then at his screen, though never in frustration, just the gentle sound of someone realizing spreadsheets will never end. The receptionist types a few words, pauses, and taps the spacebar twice more than necessary, a small quirk in her rhythm that you begin to notice each time it happens. No one hurries. No one presses. The space unfolds slowly, a quiet pattern of work that feels less like productivity and more like a shared habit. You become part of it simply by standing there, by existing among its sounds and pauses. The receptionist eventually stands and walks past you, holding a letter in one hand. As she moves, the faint scent of her perfume blends with the toner in the air, softening it slightly. She nods to you on her way to the door, a gesture, small but warm, as though you've become part of the fabric of her day. The man in the cubicle lifts his hand in a brief wave without looking up from his screen. It's not formal, not distant, just a quiet acknowledgement that you were here and part of the moment. You raise your hand in return, the gesture equally simple. And then the office settles again. The lights hum. The machine breathes. The carpet swallows footsteps. Life folds back into its steady rhythm, leaving behind the soft imprint of these small exchanges, gentle threads that tie the space together, quiet but certain. The quiet of the office lets your mind loosen. Work like this never demands constant focus, only patience, and patience has a way of opening doors you didn't plan on walking through. You lean against the desk for a moment, hand resting on the smooth laminate surface, and the past begins to drift in, not loudly, not sharply, but softly, like dust floating in the air after a drawer has been opened. Before this life, with fax machines and toner, you had another routine entirely. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't particularly memorable, but it was yours for a stretch of years. You worked in a warehouse then, the kind of place where the mornings started early, and the air was always just a little colder than you wanted it to be. The floor smelled faintly of cardboard, tape, and whatever food someone had microwaved in the break room before dawn. The light came from high windows that let in the sun only when it was already halfway up in the sky. Your job wasn't difficult, but it was steady. You moved boxes, scanned labels, and listened to the sound of forklifts moving up and down the aisles with the same patience as a clock ticking. Some days, you'd be assigned to sorting shipments, the kind of work that required you to match numbers on paper with numbers on pallets. It was simple, repetitive, the kind of work that let your mind wander far beyond the warehouse walls. You weren't bad at it, but you weren't particularly good either. You remember once mislabeling a pallet so thoroughly that half the staff ended up looking for Box of 17 when it was sitting 3 feet away, labeled Box of 71 in your neat but entirely wrong handwriting. No one yelled. They just corrected it, laughed lightly about how easily the numbers could blur, and kept moving. That was the thing about that job. No one ever seemed in a rush. The boxes would always be there, waiting. There had been humor in that place too, though of the dry and weary variety. A coworker once leaned against a stack of crates and announced that the boxes seemed happier in the dark, so maybe they should stop moving them altogether. Someone else replied that if the boxes were so content, maybe they should unionize. The joke went nowhere, but the laughter lingered, just enough to make the morning air feel less heavy. What you remember most from those years, though, are the small sensory anchors that still return unexpectedly. The sound of a tape gun snapping into place with a sharp rip. The smell of dust mixing with the faint sweetness of corrugated cardboard. The way the concrete floor felt cool even through your shoes, grounding you with every step. Those details have no real importance, yet they stay in the mind as stubbornly as any big milestone might. At the time, you didn't imagine you'd end up repairing office machines. You didn't imagine much of anything beyond the next shift. You knew only that you wanted a job that used your hands, but didn't drain your body entirely by the end of the week. When you saw the listing for a field service technician, you thought it sounded like a step in the right direction. You pictured yourself repairing sleek devices with polished panels and flashing lights, something closer to the future. You didn't picture wrestling with stubborn fax rollers in half-lit cubicles. And yet here you are, years later, with toner dust permanently etched into your skin like a second layer of freckles. It's not disappointment exactly. More like a quiet shrug at the way life chose a path while you were busy adjusting your shoes. Fax machines may not have been the future, but they gave you routine, a paycheck, and the kind of repetitive satisfaction that keeps your days neatly aligned. There are still flashes of humor in how it all turned out. Back then, you thought the fax machine was a temporary relic, something that would vanish the minute email took hold. And while email certainly did take hold, here you are, still steadying machines that insist on being relevant. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you imagine your younger self raising an eyebrow at you, maybe even laughing at how thoroughly you became the fax guy. The memory of the warehouse lingers a while longer, wrapping itself around the present like a coat you forgot you owned. You remember the sound of the radio there, too, always tuned to whatever station had the fewest commercials, though you heard the same advertisements every morning anyway. Carpet cleaning special this week only. Low interest rates for qualified buyers. By the end of your shift, the jingles would be stuck in your head, repeating themselves as you walked home under the same dull sky. It wasn't bad. It wasn't remarkable. It was simply a place where you spent a portion of your life, the way people spend years in apartments they barely remember later, or towns they drive through without noticing the signs. That job is part of you, worn smooth by time, so familiar that you can summon it with the faintest smell of tape or the sight of a shipping pallet leaning in an alley. And when you think about it, maybe that's why this current work feels so steady. The machines may hum differently than forklifts, and the offices may smell different than warehouses, but the rhythm is the same. Show up, pay attention, fix what needs fixing, and then let the day continue without you. It's not dramatic. It doesn't demand applause. It's simply the work you've carried from one space to another, softened by time until it feels like part of the background of your life. The memory loosens its grip as the present office folds back in around you. The fluorescent lights are humming again, the carpet is steady underfoot, and the fax machine glows with quiet contentment. The warehouse fades, not abruptly, but slowly, like a song ending without a final note. You're left only with the faint residue of it, the coolness of concrete floors, the smell of dust, the dry humor of tired coworkers, woven lightly into your current stillness. And that residue is enough. Your hand rests on the fax machine without thinking. It isn't affection, exactly, but there's a weight to the gesture, as though this machine has quietly volunteered itself as the anchor of the room. Its surface is warm beneath your palm, the kind of warmth that doesn't fluctuate, steady as a low-grade stove burner left on all day. The hum beneath it is constant too, vibrating faintly through the plastic casing, a reminder that while people might wander, machines stay exactly where they're put until someone decides otherwise. The machine isn't beautiful, not in the usual sense. Its beige casing is slightly yellowed from years of fluorescent light, its buttons worn shiny from the same fingers pressing them over and over. The display blinks in a faint green glow, not eager, not tired, just persistent. It's the kind of object that resists sentiment, yet here you are, finding in it the calm weight of something utterly reliable. There's a drawer nearby, filled with replacement toner and rolls of paper. You pull it open, and the scent rises immediately, dry, inky, faintly metallic. The smell is sharper than the machine itself, grounding in its own way. You thumb the edge of one box, the cardboard rough against your skin, and realize this drawer could belong to any office you've ever stepped into. A drawer like this is a passport of sorts, a quiet assurance that wherever you go, the tools of your work are waiting, unchanged. A memory tugs at the edge of your mind, not a specific moment, but a collage of mornings spent with this same smell. You think of your uncle's garage, where he kept a cabinet filled with jars of nails, screws, and bolts. He always said the smell of metal was the smell of things holding together. The fax machine drawer carries a faint echo of that same assurance. You close the drawer gently, and the click of it sliding into place is oddly final, like placing a book back on a shelf where it belongs. The room settles again around that sound, the air calm, the machine steady. You take a chair from the nearest desk and lower yourself into it. The seat gives slightly under your weight, the cushion worn in the exact spots where countless people have leaned before. From this angle, the fax machine looks less like a tool and more like a companion. It sits quietly at the edge of the room, humming without complaint, ready to deliver or receive whatever someone decides is too important for email. It doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't fight for relevance. It simply exists, a steady presence in a shifting world. The receptionist passes by again, a stack of papers balanced neatly in her hands. She pauses for a moment, glancing at the machine as though checking on a restless pet. "Still working?" she asks lightly. You nod. "For now." She smirks faintly, not unkindly. "You sound like you're talking about me." You let the corner of your mouth lift, just enough. Machines and people both need maintenance. Her laugh is brief but genuine, and then she moves on, leaving you with the steady hum once more. The interaction is small, almost incidental, yet it leaves a warmth in its wake. You return your gaze to the fax machine, realizing it has become the center not only of the room but of these conversations, these gentle threads weaving people together in small, unremarkable ways. The machine spits out a single page, unexpected. It lands in the tray with a whisper of paper against plastic. You pick it up, half expecting another blotched failure, but the page is clear this time, a typed letter with neat margins, the kind of formality that seems designed to reassure someone on the other end. You hold it for a moment, feeling the residual warmth in the paper, the faint curl along its edge, and it reminds you again of mornings at a kitchen table years ago. Back then, you'd sit with a newspaper spread across the surface, the paper cool at first, but warming quickly beneath your hands. The ink would sometimes smudge your fingertips, leaving faint gray traces that lasted the whole day. The faxed page doesn't smudge, but the sensation is similar, the physical weight of words carried on a sheet of paper, tangible proof of something said, something shared. It's strange how objects like this can tether memory without effort. A chair squeaks, and you think of the squeaky stools in your high school library. The faint hum of the fax machine calls to mind the first computer lab you ever walked into, where the monitors buzzed faintly, promising futures that now feel like half-forgotten guesses. The curl of warm paper in your hand feels like the countless school worksheets you pulled fresh from the copier, edges too hot to stack neatly. The fax machine is no different than those things, ordinary, maybe even forgettable, but it holds a quiet power as an anchor. It keeps you in place while letting your mind drift, steadying you with sound, with smell, with texture. You set the paper down again, flattening it against the desk with the side of your hand. The surface catches slightly, not enough to resist, just enough to remind you of its texture. The machine hums again, unconcerned with your reflection. It doesn't demand gratitude. It doesn't ask for notice. And yet, by its persistence, it has carved out a small space of certainty in your day. That certainty is enough. If you've been enjoying the story so far, take a moment to subscribe to Quilloren Radio. It helps keep these quiet nights and long stories coming your way. Drop a comment, too. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, let's drift a little further together. The hum of the fax machine steadies the room, but your thoughts begin to wander past it, as though the sound itself has opened a doorway. You lean back in the chair, resting your hands on your lap, and let the question rise without force. What else could you have done if life had curved just slightly differently? It's not regret exactly. Regret carries a sharpness that doesn't belong here. This is softer, more like the wondering you do when you pass by a street you've never turned down. A thought as harmless as noticing a restaurant you've never tried and thinking, maybe someday. For a time, you once considered going into design. Not flashy design, not the kind that fills magazines, but the small, practical kind. You liked sketching out little diagrams of machines in your notebook, simple rectangles with arrows showing how paper would move or how wires might connect. You pictured yourself creating devices that people would actually use, maybe even something that would solve a tiny problem nobody else noticed. But sketches stayed sketches, and the job that opened up was this one, repairing the things that other people had already built. You wonder briefly what it would have been like to walk into an office where the machine on the desk wasn't someone else's idea, but yours. To see your own design humming along, blinking steadily, maybe jamming on occasion, but still carrying your fingerprints in every button and panel. Would it have felt satisfying, or would it have been just another machine to maintain? There had also been a fleeting dream of moving somewhere else entirely. Not far, not across oceans, just to another city where the air smelled different, where you didn't know every street by heart. You pictured waking up in a small apartment above a cafe, hearing the faint clatter of dishes and the murmur of voices below, stepping out into streets where you weren't expected to know anyone at all. The idea was never urgent. It was more like a painting you kept meaning to hang but never quite got around to. By the time you thought about it seriously, the hooks for it had gone missing. There's also the quieter thought, the one you never gave much weight, but which lingers anyway. You once wanted to learn how to bake. Not in a grand professional way, but simply enough to fill a kitchen with the smell of bread rising, or to carry a cake to someone's house and watch their face light up. You bought a whisk once, convinced it would begin your journey. The whisk broke the first time you used it, caught in batter that was too thick. That seemed like a sign at the time. Now, whenever you see recipes, you remember the broken whisk and think maybe the oven, and you were never meant to be close companions. Still, you wonder what it would feel like now, to knead dough on a quiet morning, the counter dusted with flour, the radio low in the background. Would you find comfort in it? Or would it just be another task, another kind of paper jam, except in your own kitchen? The question doesn't sting. It lingers. It opens a space in your chest where the thought can rest, not unwelcome, but not insistent either. It's the kind of wondering that feels like sitting beside a locked door and casually patting your pocket for a key you know isn't there. You shift slightly in the chair, the cushion sighing beneath you, and another what-if drifts in. What if you had never left the warehouse? Would you still be labeling boxes, still miswriting numbers that sent coworkers on scavenger hunts through aisles of cardboard? Would you have found humor in it, or would the days have weighed heavier by now? You can't say for certain. The image is hazy, like a picture smudged by fingerprints, but it's there all the same. And then there's the oddest thought of all. What if fax machines really had become the peak of communication? What if email had stayed experimental, clunky and slow, and this humming, blinking box, remained the fastest way to share words across distance? You try to imagine a future still tethered to paper curls and toner streaks, where the sound of a fax line is as common as birdsong in the morning. It's a strange picture, equal parts absurd and comforting. There's humor in these thoughts, quiet but real. You picture yourself as a designer of futuristic fax machines, rolling out sleek models that claim to handle paper jams automatically, only for people to call you years later and complain that the jams are still there, just hidden in fancier casing. You think of yourself as a baker, whisk in hand, announcing proudly that you've created bread fax, a loaf that can transmit its smell across town. The absurdity is gentle, but it makes the wandering pleasant. The truth is that none of these paths were ever urgent. There were small doors you walked past, glanced at, but never pushed open. And that's fine. Life gave you this chair, this office, this hum of a machine holding steady under your hand. The alternate paths are not lost. They simply remain untouched, folded neatly in the corners of your mind, like unused paper in a drawer. The machine shifts faintly beside you, its rollers turning once as though to remind you it's still there. The sound brings you back to the present, grounding you in the steady reality of this space. You take a breath, slow and even, and let the lingering what-ifs settle into the quiet air. They don't demand answers. They don't even ask for resolution. They exist the way clouds pass across the sky, visible, temporary, and then gone. And in their absence, you are left with what has always been here, the hum of the lights, the warmth of the machine, the steady rhythm of a day that asks for nothing more than patience. The office has quieted again. The receptionist is busy at her desk. The man in the cubicle has gone silent, and the only constant sound is the low hum of the fax machine, steady as a radiator in winter. You turn slightly in your chair and notice the drawer beside the machine, one you hadn't opened earlier. Its handle is smooth from use, a dull shine where countless fingers have tugged it open. Curiosity is a quiet habit. You reach down and pull the drawer out. It resists at first, then slides forward with a gentle scrape, the sound muffled by the carpeted floor. Inside is a jumble of items, a kind of miniature time capsule that no one planned but everyone contributed to over the years. Right on top sits a stack of floppy disks, their plastic casings dark and square, labels curling at the edges. Some are handwritten in fading ink. Quarterly reports 1995, client files, and one simply marked, "Do not erase." You pick that one up and turn it over in your hand. It feels lighter than you remember floppies feeling, though maybe that's just memory playing tricks. You have no way of knowing what's on it now, but the stern handwriting makes you smile. Someone once thought this disk contained information worth defending. Now it's just a quiet relic, guarding nothing but mystery. Beneath the disks is a box of pens, most of them promotional giveaways. One reads, "Miller's Carpet, Tile, we've got you covered." Another bears the name of a local insurance agency. The ink inside each has probably dried, but the pens themselves look ready, lined up like soldiers awaiting a call to action that will never come. You pull one out and click it. Nothing. You click it again, just in case. Still nothing. You place it back in the box with the faint satisfaction of having confirmed its retirement. A paper clip catches your eye next. Not just any paper clip, but one bent into the shape of a star. You lift it carefully. The metal has lost some of its shine, dulled by years of air and touch, but the shape holds steady. Someone once took the time to twist it into this form, probably during a long phone call or a boring meeting. You wonder if they ever realized how permanent such a small act would become. The clip sits in your hand, quietly triumphant, a reminder that even the dullest objects can surprise you if you give them enough time. At the back of the drawer there's a memo, slightly yellowed, its edges curling. The header reads, "Office Procedures, revised 1993. You unfold it gently. E. All faxes must be logged in the binder. R. Personal calls limited to 5 minutes. Sen. Coffee pot, to be rinsed after last use of the day." At the bottom, in pen, someone has scrawled, "Ha!" right under the line about the coffee pot. You nod quietly to yourself. Even decades later, you can tell which rule was the most ignored. Next to the memo lies a roll of correction tape, its plastic casing cracked. The tape itself is yellowed, brittle, probably unusable. Still, you remember the satisfying way it used to glide across paper, covering mistakes in a strip of ghostly white. You turn it in your hand, and think of all the typos it once erased, words replaced before anyone else could see them. Now it sits in silence, mistakes long forgotten, its purpose fulfilled many times over. Near the front of the drawer, half hidden beneath envelopes, is a novelty keychain, a tiny rubber fax machine, no bigger than a thumb. You lift it with a laugh that surprises you. The miniature tray even holds a paper slip painted with fake writing. Someone once thought this was a clever promotional item, the kind of thing handed out at trade shows or left in conference swag bags. It's absurdly specific, a charm for a piece of technology already halfway out the door by the time it was made. You clip it to your bag for a moment, just to feel the weight of it dangling there. Tucked in the corner is a small envelope, unsealed. Inside are photographs, glossy prints, with the faint smell of photo paper that has been hiding in the dark too long. They're not dramatic, shots of an office holiday party, people in sweaters holding plastic cups of soda, a half-decorated tree leaning in the background. The smiles are casual, not posed, as though someone called out to them just before snapping the photo. You don't know their names, but the warmth in their faces lingers even now, a reminder that workspaces hold more than just machines and memos. One photo stands out. A man in a suit pretending to feed a piece of tinsel into the fax machine like it's paper. His grin is wide, his coworkers laughing behind him. You can almost hear the moment, the kind of laughter that fills an office for a day and then dissolves, leaving only the photo as proof. You set it aside carefully, as though preserving the laughter itself. At the very bottom of the drawer lies a rubber band ball, hardened with age. The layers of rubber have fused together, no longer springy, no longer useful. You pick it up and feel its weight, surprisingly solid. There was once energy stored in it, each band stretched and wrapped tightly. Now it's just mass, potential turned into permanence. It rests heavy in your palm, oddly reassuring in its stubbornness. The drawer is full of things like this, ordinary, outdated, insignificant to most, but layered together into something more. It's not a curated collection. It's an accidental archive, a time capsule built not by design but by daily habit. Each item carries a faint whisper of the people who once touched it, used it, laughed near it, forgot about it. You slide the drawer closed again, slowly, until it clicks into place. The sound echoes lightly in the quiet room. The fax machine hums on beside you, unchanged, indifferent to the treasures at its feet. But you feel a softness settle around you, as though the drawer has offered you not just objects, but a reminder of time itself, how it folds, how it lingers, how it leaves pieces of itself scattered in unexpected places. The machine blinks once, steady and calm, as if to agree. The hum of the fax machine holds steady, and with it your mind drifts outward, not into the past this time, but into the wide space of what lies far ahead. You sit back in the chair, the cushion giving another soft sigh, and let yourself imagine the years stretching forward, the way a hallway seems to lengthen when you stare too long down its center. What will this office look like in 30 years? You picture the cubicles gone, replaced by sleek desks without walls, or maybe by nothing at all if people finally decide that offices themselves are unnecessary. Perhaps this whole floor will be converted into apartments, the kind with exposed brick and carefully staged plants, where the hum of machines is replaced by the faint music of a neighbor's stereo. You wonder if someone will one day stand exactly where you're sitting now, except instead of listening to a fax machine, they'll be debating which smart appliance to reset. And what about the work itself? The idea of sending paper through a machine already feels halfway to fiction. So what will communication look like decades from now? Will there even be paper, or will people shake their heads at the thought of it, the way they now laugh about rotary phones? You imagine a future where someone tries to explain faxing to a teenager, and the teenager responds with the same blank look you once gave your grandfather when he explained how ration books worked. Yet, strangely, you can also imagine a version of the future where fax machines still exist, not because they're efficient, but because someone will always cling to them out of habit, the same way vinyl records found their way back into living rooms. Maybe a company will keep a single fax just to prove they never abandoned it, and some technician, someone like you, only younger, will be called in to fix it. You picture them, standing with the same bag of tools, the same patient hand on the panel, and you wonder if they'll feel the same quiet satisfaction when the rollers turn smoothly again. The thought is oddly comforting. Technology changes quickly, but stubbornness doesn't. People hold on to things long past their usefulness, not out of logic, but out of something softer. Fax machines might still hum in a corner, even when everything else runs on invisible signals in the air. You let your mind drift further. What about the tools you carry? Will screwdrivers and pliers still exist, or will someone one day laugh at the idea of using your hands to fix anything? Perhaps machines will repair themselves, running diagnostics and ordering their own replacement parts, like self-sufficient patients in a doctor's office. In that world, technicians might simply watch, nod, and say, "Good job," while the machines congratulate themselves. You chuckle quietly at the thought, then settle into another wondering, will the chairs finally stop squeaking? Every office you've been in has at least one chair that announces every movement like a complaint. Will future designers solve that, or will squeaks simply remain part of office life, immune to innovation? And then there's the thermostat. Every office seems to wage an endless war over the temperature, too cold for one, too warm for another, always drifting somewhere unsatisfactory in between. You wonder if, 30 years from now, thermostats will finally learn diplomacy, balancing everyone's comfort perfectly. Or maybe offices will still be filled with quiet sighs and sweaters draped over chairbacks, proof that even progress has limits. The longer you sit, the more the questions grow. Will there still be paper at all? Will there still be desks? Will there still be people gathered in shared spaces, or will everyone retreat into small glowing screens, never needing to share toner fumes again? And if the latter is true, will anyone remember the faint curl of warm paper as it slides from a tray, the small satisfaction of holding a physical page that didn't exist a moment ago? You picture a future museum exhibit labeled Office Equipment of the Late 20th Century. A beige fax machine sits behind glass, its plastic yellowed but intact. A small plaque explaining how it once transmitted information through phone lines. Children press their faces to the glass, giggling at the absurdity. Parents shake their heads and mutter, "We actually used those." And somewhere in that moment, a younger version of you exists in memory, steadying a stubborn roller, unaware of just how quickly the ordinary becomes a relic. But the reflection isn't sad. It's calm, almost tender. You know the hum of this machine won't last forever. You know the carpet beneath your shoes will one day be replaced. But you also know that every future carries echoes of what came before. Even if fax machines vanish, some small sound, smell, or texture will carry their memory forward, hidden in something new. The machine whirs softly, pulling in another page. It isn't jammed this time. It slides through smoothly, landing in the tray with the same quiet dignity as before. You lift it briefly, feeling the warmth, and wonder if someone 30 years from now will still recognize that sensation, or if it will belong only to archives and recollections like yours. The office clock ticks once, the sound sharp in the stillness, and you glance at it without reading the time. The second hand jumps forward, indifferent to your thoughts. Time moves whether you measure it or not, whether you cling to machines or leave them behind. That truth is steady, a hum older than any office. You set the page back down and lean into the chair. The cushion sighs again, loyal in its complaints, and you smile faintly. Maybe the future will bring noiseless chairs and perfect thermostats. Or maybe it will bring louder squeaks and colder air, proof that some things resist even the most determined innovation. Either way, you'll never know for certain. What you know is this. In this moment, the fax machine hums, the office holds steady, and you are here to notice it. That's enough. The hum of the machine holds steady, and your thoughts take a softer turn. No longer stretching forward into decades or tracing the long shadow of time, but instead slipping into small, private musings. The kind that don't mean anything, that never become plans, that fade as quickly as they appear. Still, they are gentle companions while you sit in this quiet office with its beige walls and tired carpet. What if the fax machine had a sense of humor? You picture it holding on to one page longer than it should, not jamming, not tearing, just waiting until you lean in close before releasing it with a flourish. A kind of mechanical prank. You'd never tell anyone, of course. Who would believe you if you said the machine was joking around? Yet the thought makes you smirk, and for a brief moment the beige plastic looks less ordinary. Your mind drifts again. What if, instead of paper, the fax machine produced something else entirely? Maybe warm sheets of fresh bread, each slice sliding out perfectly toasted. Or handwritten notes from people you've never met, written in different languages and ink colors, each one a small puzzle. Or maybe the tray would fill with postcards from places you've never been, the images bright and the corners soft, carrying messages from strangers who somehow thought of you. You lean back, considering the weight of the chair. What if chairs could sigh on their own, without anyone sitting? A room full of empty chairs might whisper to each other, exhaling little breaths, as if discussing the people who once leaned against them. You imagine walking into a room and hearing a chorus of tiny sighs, a furniture choir rehearsing for no audience. Odd, but strangely soothing. Another thought slips in. What if the vending machine in the hallway dispensed not snacks, but secrets? Press B6, and out comes a folded note with a recipe someone never shared. Press D4, and you get a memory about a long walk on a rainy morning. Coins in, mysteries out. You'd stand there longer than anyone else, collecting these pieces of someone else's quiet life, stacking them neatly before returning to your desk. The fluorescent lights overhead buzz faintly, and you glance up. What if they decided to dim and brighten on their own, not in that flickering, broken way, but in patterns? Maybe they'd pulse like fireflies, signaling to each other. One corner glowing softly, then another, as though the room itself wanted to set a rhythm. A secret code you're too tired to decipher. Would anyone notice? Or would the rhythm belong only to you? Your gaze falls back to the stack of paper. What if, instead of words, the pages carried faint scents? One page smelling like fresh-cut grass, another like coffee at dawn, another like the sharp coolness of rain on pavement. You'd shuffle through them like a deck of memories, inhaling small pieces of a life you didn't quite live. The radiator gives its usual tick, the kind that marks its slow adjustment. You imagine it deciding to play tunes, subtle but recognizable. A few taps that form a nursery rhyme, or a quiet melody no one can quite name. You'd sit in your chair, pretending to focus on paper jams, while secretly following along as the radiator plays its set list. Then, a different fancy. What if, late at night, when the office is empty, all the machines loosen up? The fax stretches its rollers like arms after a long day. The copier hums a low lullaby, and the vending machine shifts its candy bars into a more comfortable position. You wouldn't catch them in the act, but you'd know. You'd walk in each morning and sense the room had lived a secret life without you. Your thoughts wander back to yourself. What if you had a small superpower? Nothing grand, just something private. Like always, knowing where the nearest pen was. Or never pouring too much milk in your coffee. Or being able to predict, with perfect accuracy, whether a chair would squeak before you sat in it. Not heroic, not dramatic, just a quiet gift that belonged to no one else. The clock ticks again, and you wonder, what if clocks could lie? not maliciously, but kindly. You look up and see you had an extra hour before closing. Or that the meeting already ended while you weren't looking. A clock that understood what you needed most and adjusted itself to suit you. A companion more than a measurement. Your eyes return to the stack of tools in your bag. What if they carried stories? The screwdriver murmuring about every screw it ever turned, the pliers muttering about each grip they held, the lint-free cloth recalling every smudge it erased. You'd hear their voices overlap, a chorus of small labors, each proud in its own quiet way. The thought lingers as you sit back, hands resting in your lap. These small fantasies don't aim to change anything. They don't reach into the past or stretch into the future. They live only here, in this stillness woven into the hum of machines and the tick of a clock. Like little sparks in a dim room, glowing briefly before fading into the air. And when they fade, the room is still here. The machine hums. The paper waits. The chair sighs. Nothing has changed, and that's the comfort of it. The hum of the fax machine becomes less like a machine at all, more like a distant note holding in the air. It has no urgency, no task, no paper to move through its rollers. It simply exists, steady and constant, like the faint resonance of a room that has learned to breathe with you. You settle deeper into the chair, shoulders heavy, spine loose, eyes soft against the pale wash of light. The fluorescent tubes overhead glow without effort. They do not flicker, they do not buzz. Their light feels even and full, the sort of glow that does not pull attention but rather spreads across the carpet, the desk, the stack of paper. It has no sharp edges, only a calm presence, as though the light itself has been resting here far longer than you. Breath moves slowly now. Each inhale is long, filling you with quiet air, carrying the faintest scent of warm plastic recycled ventilation and the trace of paper fibers. Each exhale is longer, softer, like a gentle release into the stillness. The sound of your breathing folds into the sound of the hum, indistinguishable. It feels less like you are breathing alone, and more like you are part of the room's rhythm. The clock on the wall ticks at its usual pace. Each click of the second hand lands softly, like a pebble dropping into water. The ripples move outward and fade before they touch anything. Time is still moving, but it no longer feels like movement. It is just another sound, no heavier than breath, no more pressing than the quiet glow of the light. Your hands are loose in your lap. The fingers have lost their edges, their distinction, melting into the weight of your arms, which melt into the weight of your shoulders, which melt into the full heaviness of your body. You no longer notice individual muscles. You no longer hold tension in places. Each part dissolves into the next, until the idea of separation fades completely. The stack of paper sits beside the fax machine. Its surface is smooth, its corners sharp, but you do not think of those details. You only sense its stillness. The paper waits, patient, silent, requiring nothing of you. In its waiting, it becomes more than sheets pressed together. It becomes a shape of calm, a monument to the absence of motion. The chair holds you. The cushion has molded to your weight. The fabric presses evenly against your body. You feel no need to shift or move. The chair has accepted you, and you have accepted it, and together you both rest in the same still air. The radiator has gone completely silent now, though its warmth lingers in the room. It feels less like heat and more like balance. Neither hot nor cool, only steady. The warmth has seeped into the air, into the carpet, into the desk, into you. Your thoughts slow further. Words drift away. The need to describe softens. What was once light is now simply presence. What was once hum is now simply ground. What was once air is now simply flow. The room becomes a collection of textures without names, sensations without edges. Breath continues. In, out, slow, gentle. Each cycle longer, more drawn out, more dissolved into everything else. You no longer think of where the breath begins or where it ends. It moves without instruction. It carries no effort. It belongs as much to the room as it does to you. The hum grows faint. Or perhaps your attention grows faint. Either way, it no longer seems to come from a single place. It does not belong only to the machine. It belongs to the desk, to the chair, to the walls, to the light, to the clock. It spreads until it feels as if the hum is the room itself. The edges blur. The walls lose their lines. The desk softens. The chair becomes less a separate object and more a continuation of your body. The air becomes thicker, heavier, though not in weight, only in presence. You are not sitting in the room anymore. You are part of the room. Your breath blends with the hum. The hum blends with the light. The light blends with the air. Each thing that once seemed distinct now overlaps, merging into a single whole. There is no more stack of paper. There is only surface. There is no more clock. There is only rhythm. There is no more chair. There is only weight. There is no more you. There is only presence. Breath continues. In, out. Slower now, softer now, deeper now. Each cycle expands further, as though you are inhaling the entire room, then releasing it again. The inhale carries light. The exhale carries warmth. The inhale carries hum. The exhale carries silence. The silence thickens. The clock fades into it. The radiator dissolves into it. The fluorescent glow becomes part of it. The hum of the fax machine, steady and even, lowers until it cannot be separated from the quiet itself. Everything is still. Everything is whole. Everything is gone. And you rest in it, fully dissolved.